Depending on where you are, this unprecedented storm dropped from 10 to 29 inches of rain across the mountains, causing life-threatening floods and landslides. Unfortunately, 11 people in our state have died as a result of this storm, and tragically, we know there will be more.
That was North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper delivering a press conference Sunday after Hurricane Helene pummeled the southeastern coast of the country over the weekend. The catastrophic storm carved a 500-mile path of death and destruction. As of this taping, nearly 100 people are dead, hundreds are still missing, and some 2 million people have been left without power. Cooper said the administration approved the state's emergency declaration and funds for relief.
President Biden is set to address the disaster on Monday morning. Donald Trump blasted Biden and Kamala Harris, who happened to be in San Francisco this weekend. Here he is at a rally in Erie, Pennsylvania. Let's watch.
But they raise a lot of money from bad people, fundraising events with their radical left lunatic donors, when big parts of our country have been devastated by that massive hurricane and is underwater with many, many people dead. She ought to be here. She ought to be down in the area where she should be. That's what she's getting paid for.
Critics also wondered, where are Joe and Kamala? Former advisor to Trump, Stephen Miller, tweeted, Kamala used every available government resource to airlift and evacuate 500,000 Haitian illegals to the United States, but she couldn't lift a finger to rescue drowning Americans in Asheville. Serial Biden critic Greg Price posted, quote, the entire city of Asheville, North Carolina is underwater. The people are using Starlink to let their loved ones know they're alive. Why isn't the media talking about this? Where is Biden and Kamala? And Nick Sorter posted, quote, Asheville and Western North Carolina are underwater. Biden's at the beach. Kamala's at a fundraiser with West Coast elites. Radio silence from the White House. This is infuriating. Now, it was reported this morning by The Hill that Kamala Harris is cutting her Las Vegas trip short, returning to Washington, D.C. to meet with FEMA to discuss what is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I have limited tolerance for the criticisms of it's not just Biden or Harris, but presidents or vice presidents not going to the site of these kind of natural disasters. Because I think, honestly, it's political theatre a lot of the time. There is nothing or very little substantively that can be done by whoever the sitting president happened to be, it happens to be Joe Biden, going there to North Carolina right now. Any emergency aid can be directed from Washington and funneled through the local authorities on the ground who know actually what to do with it. And the danger in a major visit from a political figure is that you then get all of the sort of accoutrements of a big political visit, Secret Service, media attention, all of that, which as often hampers the rescue and recovery efforts as it helps them. So I'm not all that enthused about those criticisms.
Yeah, I don't particularly disagree, especially if the complaint or the criticism is that, Kamala Harris is doing campaign events or whatever instead of focusing on the disaster. Well, if she goes there and visits, or Joe Biden does, I mean, that's a campaign. Yeah, right. That's, what is she going to be doing but a photo op? So if you're criticizing her for doing that while the hurricane's happening, her doing it makes no difference. That's what Donald Trump is doing. You're right. There's little to it's symbolic. Mm-hmm. It might reassure some people to see their leadership at the site, as very famously we were all reassured throughout the country when George W. Bush visited Ground Zero and made his remarks. So it can be effective. But you're right, there isn't that much to do. I mean, now the complicating factor, of course, is Joe Biden more so than Kamala Harris, because he has had a very low profile really since the disastrous debate, and from stepping out of the presidential race. There are serious concerns about his mental fitness given his advanced age. It's more of a fair criticism to wonder, not that he should go down there and do some press conference, but can he speed up any process? What is he involved in? I worry about this most for the tense state of national security affairs with everything going on in the Middle East. Is he on top of it? Is he having conversations? What is he doing? Is he aware of what's going on? These are questions you don't want to have about your president.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly true that he has kept a very low profile. He has done some events. I was in the White House late last week when he and the vice president spoke as he signed an executive order pertaining to gun violence. He gave, somewhat brief remarks. He seemed fine, though. But I do think that there is there is an argument because of the uniqueness of the current situation that Biden should be more at liberty to go to Asheville or wherever it should happen to be, because after all, he's not on the campaign trail. There is some reporting from the Associated Press this morning that he may indeed do that sometime in the days ahead. My issue really is more about the absolute immediate aftermath of either a natural disaster or some other catastrophic tragedy, where I just think that all sides use it for partisan point scoring, basically. And so you get criticised if you don't go. If you do go, you get criticised for it being a photo op. Different setting, obviously, but Kamala Harris went to the border late last week. The criticism from the right was, well, she didn't spend enough time there. It's like, okay, but are people who are very critical of her border policy going to be assuaged if she spends, 5 hours there rather than 1 hour? That seems unlikely.
I did see some discussion, we didn't show any of it there, but from the right more broadly, I can't quite remember exactly who I saw made this point on social media, but someone did, that whenever there, how many emergency funding bills for Ukraine has Congress rubber stamped? Israel continues to get its funding as its war increases. For foreign powers, foreign interests, it's perfunctory, the approval Congress gives to the administration every single time in bipartisan fashion. When there's some domestic crisis, similar energy is not mustered to confront it by the federal government.
That may be true, and where it's true, I think it's wrong. I think that there is a separate issue from what we've been talking about the past few minutes about the efficiency of government aid and getting aid to people and getting it in where it most matters. We all remember, hell of a job, Brownie, in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, I think, right? And that obviously affected the Bush administration. And yes, sometimes the photo op side of things can be politically damaging, as it was the case with that famous photo of Bush on Air Force One looking down on the devastation and flying over it. So I'm not saying that the political optics can't matter. Sometimes they do. I just think they're a very separate issue from the substantive aid that certainly should be given to North Carolina and anywhere else that has its people affected by this storm.
Certainly. These are, as we remarked, the two potential swing states that are very affected, Georgia and North Carolina. And so I'm sure the candidates are seeing how can we, spin this to our advantage?
Yeah. And also just how can we
cynical fashion.
Right. And also just how can we make clear that we are here for the people in some fashion, whether that is literally and geographically there, or whether it's at least having some moral support and ideally practical support too.
We'll be back with more Rising right after this. Stay tuned.